Hello, today our lesson will be talking about the structure of the atom. Our objectives are we will be able to define the atom, we will know the properties of the subatomic particles, we will talk about the gold foil experiment and the cathode ray tube experiment. First of all, we need to know what's an atom. An atom is the basic unit of an element that can be broken down by any means. There are 118 different types of atoms, which is the smallest part of an element. So atoms make up everything, but what makes up an atom? Atoms are made up of three tiny particles called protons, electrons, and neutrons. As you can see here, electrons are the green, neutrons are red, and protons are blue. And each type of atom has a different property. This comes down all the way to what's inside the atom. Each one of these tiny particles does something special. For example, protons, they are positively charged. Each element has a different number of protons. This is what makes the elements different. The number of protons can be known as the atomic number of the element. Now, let's take a look at the periodic table. Here we have hydrogen with only one proton, helium with two protons, lithium with three protons. If all the elements had the same number of protons, for example, if all the elements had one proton, this would mean that all of the elements would be hydrogen, because protons make the elements different. Electrons. Electrons are much smaller than the protons. They are negatively charged. They revolve around the nucleus at the speed of light, making up something called an electron cloud. Electrons are always attracted to the protons due to their different charges. And this attraction force is called electric force, and it's always there. And for an atom to be stable, the number of electrons should be equal to the number of protons. So why do you think an atom would need a neutron after all of this? Now let's see. Neutrons, they are neutral, which means they have no charge. Together, neutrons and protons make up the nucleus, and together they make up the atomic mass of the atom. A very strong force exists between the neutrons and the protons called the nuclear force, which stops the protons from flying apart. Now that we have known about the subatomic particles, let's talk about the experiments in which scientists were able to discover these subatomic particles. First, we will talk about the cathode ray experiment held in 1897. William Crookers discovered cathode rays when he was studying electrical discharges in gases. And Thomson discovered that the cathode rays consist of negatively charged particles called the electrons. Now, let's take a look about the production of the cathode rays. Here, cathode rays are produced in a discharged tube. As you can see, it's evacuated with cathodes and anodes at the end of the tube. Also, a glow is seen on the glass tube here, as you can see, due to the strikes of the emitted by the cathode. What did the scientists conclude from this experiment? After the experiment, Thomson could conclude that the rays were and are basically negatively charged particles present or moving around in a state of a positive charge. He described the atomic structure as a positively charged sphere in which the negatively charged electrons were embedded, known as the plum pudding model. Now let's take a look at the plum pudding model. Here, he described the atom as a positive body, as you can see right here, with negative spots, like the pudding. It's pudding and plums. Now that the cathode ray tube experiment told us how did they discover the electron, let's see how did they discover the proton, the neutron, and the nucleus. The gold foil experiment was held in 1911. Ernest Rutherford, along with Hans Geiger and Ernest Martin, carried out the gold foil experiment. This is how the setup of the experiment looks. A source of alpha particles looked in a lead, as you can see here, with a very small slit. A very thin gold foil over here, and this circular thing is known as the fluorescent screen. It's a detector in which it emits light when the rays are hit directly into it. The production of the experiment. The alpha particles were emitted from the element present in the box, like the previous slide. Then three things happened. Most of the particles hit the detector. Some of the particles deflected with small angles. Few of the particles were rebounded. What does that mean? Let's see. As you can see here, Rutherford expected the particles to go straight through the atom without anything, like the pink model up there. But what actually happens was that most of the particles, yeah, they went straight. Some of them, they deflected with a small angle. And only a few of them, they rebounded. They hit something, then they went back. Now, what could we conclude based on these observations? We could conclude three main things. When most of the particles travel through the foil undeflected, it means that mostly the atom is an empty space, which means that the plum pudding model isn't correct. That the plum pudding model stated that the atom is a positive body, but actually it's mostly empty. When some of the particles deflected by a small angle, it means that there is a nucleus, which is a positive body, as the same as the particles. So what happened when the beam of particles, the pink one as you can see here, hit the nucleus, a repulsion happened due to that both particles have the same positive charge. When few of the particles traveled back from the foil, this means that the alpha particles hit something solid, something very dense. So, which led that the particles, they traveled back from the foil. This is how they discovered the nucleus, which is the positive, very, very dense body inside of the atom. And this is also how they knew that the protons, that the atom isn't actually a positive body. It's mostly empty with a very dense body in the middle known as the nucleus. Thank you.